So when these guys oppose Trump, and they say, this is the reason why you shouldn't vote for Trump, I think it's the great connection of dots that has been lacking from this campaign, that we finally have them out in the open. We have the war criminals and the rest of that whole criminal state, the covert criminal state of the U.S., they're now out in the open. And there's a candidate, a Republican candidate, who very properly says, I would say the same if I were in his position, I think it is a badge of honor to be denounced by these people. Who could not agree?
We have all served in senior national security and/or foreign policy positions in Republican administrations from Nixon to George W. Bush. We have worked directly on national security issues with these Republican presidents and/or the principal advisors during wartime and other periods of crisis, through successes and failures. We know the personal qualities required of a president of the United States. None of us will vote for Donald Trump.
I'm fighting, all of us across the country are fighting, for a peaceful regime change in our own country. I wear their opposition as a badge of honor.
The worst criminals of the U.S. administration over the last 10 years, war criminals to begin with, have been all named and all coming together in a group like they did in the Project for the New American Century. Which was before they waged the genocidal, eco-genocidal wars in Iraq and in Libya. All these people pretty well are involved in those major crimes against humanity and against the world and against ecology. Two in particular stand out to me. Philip Zelikow, who wrote the Commission on the 9/11, which was just a continuous big lie. He himself wrote the scenario for 9/11 and pulling this hoax on the American people and the world. He wrote the scenario for it before 9/11 occurred.
The man who really controlled the direction of the investigation of the commission and the man who very much controlled the writing of the report was Philip Zelikow, this was supposed to be a group outside the government, but Zelikow had written a book with Condoleezza Rice. There was no way you could think of him as an outsider.
Philip Zelikow is one of the key operatives in the cover-up of the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
Which is, of course, kept secret. And then the other one who even more dramatically strikes me is John Negroponte. Now, I'm old enough to have remembered and indeed to have been associated with the people who were genocided in El Salvador. The crime that went on there was led by Negroponte, mainly out of Honduras. It was basically the death squads. Negroponte was the orchestrator of the death squads in El Salvador, and we're going back to the 70s here. Not only was he at the core of that, which was the most hideous system of war crime against the poor Central American people who were finding some social life infrastructure in their organization to get back at the oligarchy of mining the land and mining them out of their life in order to turn much more money for the oligarchy. Not only did he do that in El Salvador, but he then went to Iraq after the criminal war was declared, or not declared, the criminal attack on Iraq that no one would recognize was the supreme crime under international law when they invaded Iraq and bombed Iraq back to the Stone Age, to use the Vietnam language. Negroponte didn't hear his name until I heard they were doing trying to work out a strategy of how they were going to get out of what they had stirred up there, which was when you do a major war crime, when you do a crime that's actually eco-genocidal in its nature, what are you going to do when the people start to fight back? As fight back they did. It didn't matter whether they were Shias or Sunnis or Christians or whatever. Everybody knew this was a hideous war crime. Well, what were you going to do? Well, Negroponte comes to the fore again.
I have asked John Negroponte to serve in this vital position at this crucial moment.
And he says, we're going to use the Salvador option. And what that meant was now Iraq too was going to be treated like El Salvador was, having been pre-bombed so that they had no life infrastructures left or no ability to fight back, but they still did fight back. So we've got to get at the people who are leading this, because people are willing to sacrifice their lives to fight this criminal, worse invasion than Hitler, worse invasion than the Nazis probably did anywhere, was going on in Iraq. And so what Negroponte, with the typical U.S. foreign policy option, was to have death squads and to move around and death squad everybody who was presenting any problem. So that would target the leading individuals in the society, and it didn't matter whether they're Sunni or Shia or whatever. It was just kill anybody who knows how to fight back and reclaim their land that has been invaded like the Nazis. That's Negroponte. So when we have a combination of Zelikow and Negroponte, and then lots of other, Robert King, lots of other names of the people who have been implicated in these greatest crimes in the modern history, war crimes.
No, we cannot leave Gaddafi in power, and we won't leave Gaddafi in power.
His name is Bill Kristol. From day one, this poor guy, I watch him, but here's what I don't understand. Why do you keep putting a guy on television that's been proven to be wrong for so many years? First of all, he wants the war in Iraq. He wants Iraq. All the guy wants to do is kill people and go to war and kill people.
My recommendation to NATO and the administration is to cut the head of the snake off. Go to Tripoli, start bombing.
Vicious attacks against basically defenseless people, always people without air defenses. These were the strategists behind it. And so when Trump, does Trump say anything he wants in order to get votes? Well, I have always thought I never took Trump seriously until I saw the people that opposed him. And the more I saw the people that opposed Trump, the more I realized, oh, well, maybe Trump is standing for something that wasn't visible to me before. So I began my own research, because you wouldn't find it in the media, the mass media, my own research into Trump and what he was opposed to. And I would bring in things like Iraq, and I would bring in things like the trade agreements, which are just the peaceful way of land clearance and destroying of a society in order to loot them of their resources and their labor and whatever else might be on the way to the next. He was opposed to this so-called free trade, which is in fact treaty diktats against people that's being imposed upon them, and if they don't go for it, as Iraq didn't go for it before, it was the best, the most developed country in the Middle East and even the Central Asia, destroy them. And so when Trump opposed the Iraq war and said, these involvements in the Middle East he's thinking American, he's thinking of the 3 trillion or how many trillions that have gone in of wasting public resources on these wars of aggression and criminal invasion. They spend over $1 billion a day on basically what? There's no enemy, there's no Cold War. They're just basically reproducing themselves in ever more monstrous and invasive forms. So when these guys oppose Trump, and they say this is the reason why you shouldn't vote for Trump, I think it's the great connection of dots that has been lacking from this campaign, that we finally have them out in the open. We have the war criminals and the rest of that whole criminal state, the covert criminal state of the U.S. They're now out in the open. And there's a candidate, a Republican candidate, who very properly says, I would say the same if I were in his position, I think it is a badge of honor to be denounced by these people. Who could not agree?
Every day you pick up a newspaper or turn on the nightly news and you hear about some self-interest banker or some self-discredited Washington insider say they oppose Donald Trump's campaign, or some encrusted old politician says they oppose our campaign, or some big-time lobbyist says they oppose the campaign of Trump. I wear their opposition as a badge of honor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great honor. It's a great honor. Because it means I'm fighting for real change, not just partisan change where everybody else gets rich but you. A rigged system. Remember it. I said it first. I'll probably be saying it for a long time. But eventually, we're going to break that system. I'm fighting, all of us across the country are fighting, for peaceful regime change in our own country. The media donor political complex that's bled this country dry has to be replaced with a new government of, by, and for the people. The leadership clash in Washington, D.C., of which Hillary Clinton has been a member for 30 years, has abandoned the people of this country. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great honor.